In the headlines, Typhoon Neoguri hits Japan and the southern parts of Korea, canceling flights and causing blackouts in Jeju. The U.S. and China open high-level annual talks in Beijing on Wednesday, recognizing they need to manage their differences and avoid conflicts. And Germany dominates host country Brazil in stunning 7-1 victory to advance to the final in 2014 World Cup.
Hello and welcome to Primetime News. I'm Sean Lim.
And I'm Kang Chiri. Thanks for joining us tonight. We begin with the Typhoon Neoguri. It's bringing 250 km/h winds and heavy rains to Japan's southern coastline.
And here in Korea, a typhoon warning has been issued for Jeju Island, and officials are advising residents to take action. Our Shin Se-min has more.
Typhoon Neoguri is on the move, turning northward toward mainland Japan, bringing heavy rain and winds. In Korea, its effect is currently being felt on the southern island of Jeju, where it's left over 3,000 households without power. Earlier on Wednesday, the Korea Meteorological Administration issued a typhoon warning over the waters, saying the storm will bring torrential rain and high winds. According to the alert, Jeju Island could see up to 30 millimeters of rain per hour, with winds of up to 20 meters per second. The strongest typhoon so far in the 2014 Western Pacific season was at its most powerful when it passed Okinawa on Tuesday. At least 2 people have been killed and more than a dozen injured. Japanese officials have issued the strongest warnings to residents in the typhoon's path. Over 500,000 people on the islands were forced to seek shelter. All domestic flights to and from Okinawa had been canceled until further notice, and over 95,000 households in the region have no power.
It's been a bit tough with the power going out, but I'm glad that my house didn't get destroyed.
Neoguri has lost some of its intensity from its original status as a super typhoon, but it still remains intense, packing gusts of more than 250 km/h. The storm is expected to make landfall on Japan's Kyushu Island late Wednesday local time. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
In Seoul's National Assembly, lawmakers gave 3 of President Park Geun-hye's cabinet nominees the green light on this Wednesday. Getting the nod were Lee Byung-gi for National Intelligence Service Chief, Lee Ki-kwan for Minister of Employment and Labor, and Kim Hee-jung for Minister of Gender Equality and Family. The president tapped 8 nominees for various cabinet positions last month. All but 1 have gone through their hearings and are now awaiting confirmation. Culture Minister nominee Chung Sung-geun, currently the CEO of Arirang TV, will appear before Parliament tomorrow. And shifting our focus, more missile launches by North Korea this morning, just days after it proposed an end to all military hostilities across the border. Hwang Sung-hee has the details.
North Korea fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles into the East Sea early Wednesday morning. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said the projectiles, believed to be Scud missiles with a range of 500 kilometers, were launched at around 4 a.m. Korea time from the north's western Hwanghae-do province without prior warning. The missiles fell in international waters. Wednesday's launch marks the 13th launch of projectiles by Pyongyang this year. North Korea had fired 2 short-range projectiles a week ago, just 1 day ahead of Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to South Korea. This latest launch also comes only days after Pyongyang claimed Seoul must shift its confrontational policy toward the north to one that would lead to reconciliation between the 2 Koreas. A South Korean military official who wished to remain anonymous said the latest missile launch could be seen as an armed demonstration by North Korea to show that it can fire missiles anywhere at any time. The South Korean military has heightened its vigilance and beefed up its military readiness against any additional provocations by the North. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
The U.S. and China say they need to manage their differences and avoid conflicts as they open two-day high-level talks in Beijing today. But they still have so much on the table, including North Korea, territorial and trade disputes, and cyber espionage. Park Ji-won tells us more.
The world's two biggest economies launched 2 days of annual talks in Beijing this Wednesday, with Chinese President Xi Jinping emphasizing the importance of bilateral cooperation.
Sino-U.S. cooperation can be a significant achievement that is beneficial to both sides and to the world. A confrontation between the two countries will be a disaster. We should mutually respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity and respect each other's development paths.
The U.S. is being represented by Secretary of State John Kerry and Treasury Secretary Jacob Lew, and China by State Councilor Yang Zhichu and Vice Premier Wang Yang. Kerry stressed that the U.S. does not wish to contain China and welcome the emergence of a peaceful China.
And despite our differences, our two nations have the ability to find the common ground. That's the foundation on which we need to build decades of prosperity for the future, and also build the possibilities of stability and peace at the same time.
A number of issues are on the table for discussion, including a bilateral investment treaty and China's currency valuation. They are also expected to exchange views on more sensitive issues, like the territorial disputes in the South China Sea and East China Sea that have gripped the region, China's alleged hacking attacks on U.S. companies, and the North Korean nuclear issue. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
With Chinese President Xi Jinping's recent visit to Seoul and a slew of economic deals freshly signed, it would be fair to say that the economic relationship between South Korea and China has never been better. Connie Kim reports on the rapidly expanding economic and business relationship between Seoul and Beijing.
Chinese company Tencent has begun investing $523 million in Korea's CJ Games, which it says will be completed by the end of this year. The single case of investment far exceeds the total sum of investment by all Chinese companies last year that stood at just over $480 million. The Tencent's move is a departure from a traditional investment pattern by Chinese companies that used to limit their investments in real estate. Last week's agreement between the two countries to let their businessmen settle their bilateral trade in their own currencies will open a new window of opportunities in the financial sector.
The biggest achievement with President Xi Jinping's visit to Seoul was pushing for financial cooperation between the two countries, allowing direct trading between the won and the yuan, and allowing yuan-holding Korean companies to directly invest in China's stock and fund markets will greatly contribute to expanding cooperation in the financial industry.
The agreement between President Park Geun-hye and President Xi last week to make every effort to conclude a free trade agreement this year will further boost rapidly expanding bilateral trade. Korea's two-way trade with China jumped more than 50-fold to $230 billion last year from 1992 when the two nations set up diplomatic ties. That exceeds a combined value of Korea's trade with the U.S. and Japan. Now, once a free trade deal is reached, the leaders of the countries expect their trade value to top $300 billion next year. Experts caution, however, that to keep expanding business ties between the two economies in a complementary way, Korean companies must maintain its technological superiority and improve competitiveness in the service industry. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
After Samsung Electronics posted far from impressive earnings for the second quarter earlier this week, it's pushing to find its next big thing to get back on track. But analysts aren't holding their breaths that it will come by the third quarter. Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
The future of Samsung Electronics lies in the balance, and that was never more true than now. One after another, securities firms are lowering their projections for Samsung's third quarter after the company reported lower than expected earnings for the previous quarter. At least 26 securities firms in Seoul already say the smartphone maker will record an average of $8.5 billion in operating profit in the third quarter, which is a drop of more than 15% from last year's projections for the same period.
Samsung's slowdown in the second quarter is widely seen as a result of a slowdown brought on by a saturated market of high-end smartphones.
In response, Samsung is eyeing its next growth engine. One of these is the Internet of Things, where various smart devices are connected through the Internet using sensors on gadgets. As a manufacturer of electronic devices, Samsung does have a strength in this field. The company launched its smart home in April, which connects smart sensors in home appliances. The service makes home automation easy with a single app that connects and controls many home appliances, from TVs and mobile devices to internet-connected burglar alarms and light switches. Samsung is also working to promote its health and fitness gadgets. The Samsung Strategy and Innovation Center in Silicon Valley in the United States presented a service in May called Sami, a cloud platform that saves and analyzes collected data from the company's wearable devices, the Samsung Gear and the Gear Fit. Kim Jeong, Arirang News.
And Samsung Electronics isn't the only one hurting when it comes to disappointing second quarter earnings. The nation's top 20 conglomerates are also expected to follow suit with a collective fall in operating profits of roughly 7%. Kim Min-ji reports.
Korea's top 20 conglomerates by market capitalization are expected to turn in disappointing scorecards for the second quarter. According to market researcher Evan Guide, the combined operating profit of the top 20 companies is expected to amount to about 18 trillion won, or roughly $17.8 billion, which is down 7.1% from last year. Their combined sales are also expected to fall about 1% to sit at just over $200 billion. The slip has come on the back of a stronger won, which has hit export-reliant firms the hardest. Automobile companies' profits will also be affected. The operating profit for Hyundai Motor, the second largest, is expected to come to roughly $2.3 billion, down 6.7% from last year. During the same period, Kia Motors is also likely to see a drop of almost 21%. The automobile industry says that sales will be similar to last year, driven by the sales of new cars, but operating profits will dip due to the stronger won and marketing expenses related to the Brazil World Cup. POSCO, LG Display, and Hyundai Heavy Industries are also expected to see a decline. On the flip side, firms in the financial and IT sectors will likely turn in strong report cards, with firms centered around domestic consumption set to benefit from the strong won. Samsung C&T is expected to see a jump of about 59%, Naver 32%, and LG Electronics 10.3%. LG's mobile communications division is also likely to turn a profit in the second quarter on strong sales of its new G3 smartphone, and that's expected to have a positive effect on the performance cards of affiliates that supply parts to LG and tech giant Samsung Electronics. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Well, take a look around these days and you'll see prominent positions in society held by non-ethnic Koreans, from Filipino legislator Jasmine Lee to Vietnamese Korean Little Sai. You can see the beginnings of a new Korea in the number of foreign residents that's climbing by the year.
Exactly. The latest stats show actually that 3 out of every 100 Koreans, people living in Korea are foreign nationals. But are their lives here improving as well? Our Lian joins us for this conversation. So how big is the foreign population in Korea?
Well, the number of foreign residents have been rising consistently since the past few years, and it actually surpassed 1.56 million earlier this year. That's equivalent to the population of Daejeon, which is Korea's third largest city. Now, foreign workers from China make up a huge proportion of the foreign population here in Korea, and most of the group lives in Seoul and the surrounding Gyeonggi-do province. Yet their quality of life has not kept pace with their population growth. Take a look.
This district, which sits at the heart of the industrial city of Ansan, is known as a borderless village. Take one glimpse down the street, and the signs in different languages give no indication that you're in Korea.
Southeast Asian workers began arriving in the mid-1990s to seek their fortunes in local factories, giving birth to this bustling multicultural village. 2/3 of the over 16,000 residents here are now non-Korean. The city promotes itself as foreigner-friendly, but area residents feel there's still much left to do before that description applies.
So many people and merchants crowd the streets on the weekends that it takes 10 times longer to get anywhere. The city made the streets pretty, but there's nothing being done to take care of them.
Jung says the government that built the multi-ethnic city is simply turning away from the migrant population and refusing to face the reality of their living situation. To make matters worse, the local community service center says that foreigners are leaving trash bags in the streets, prompting loads of odor complaints.
The lack of government support has raised the concern that the area could eventually turn into a slum and become a place that the local Koreans avoid entirely.
The director says that the people who have helped build this city deserve better support.
So, Leon, communities like these can't be really written off. How important is it for Korea to cultivate this new foreigner population?
Well, very important, John, if we're considering Korea's economy. The country's population is expected to contract starting in 2025, and that's, of course, because Korea has the lowest fertility rate in the OECD member countries, meaning the average Korean woman is likely to have just one child. Now, 5 years later, in 2030, the OECD expects Korea to fall into a low growth trap in which its GDP growth is limited to an average of just 1%. But analysts say foreign workers could play a significant role in helping turn things around. According to the Migration Research Center, if the number of foreign workers grows by 10%, it will increase GDP by 0.23%. And if the number rises by 20%, it will increase the GDP by over 0.4%.
So what's the most urgent task at this point at hand? I mean, as we saw in this report just now, improving their living conditions is a first.
Yes, that and of course the education of migrant children is of course also of utmost importance. Experts say it's crucial for students to get the right education so they are comfortable in mainstream society. But it turns out that 1 in 4 immigrant children do not attend middle or high school. And to find out why, I visited a support center for multi-ethnic families in Ansan and talked to one immigrant mother from China.
I'm afraid my children will become outcasts because their mom is Chinese. I'm afraid Korean children will not want to play with my children. In Korea, I feel pressure to send my kids to academies after school, but I can't afford it.
And the officials from the community center there tells me this kind of fear, this mentality is prevalent among immigrant mothers, and say the government should come up with better support measures for migrant children, for example, by providing supplementary lessons after school, especially designed for them.
All right. Well, a lot of work ahead there, but a very important community indeed. Thank you so much, Leon, for that report.
No problem.
Afghan presidential candidate Abdullah has declared victory despite early results showing his main rival in the lead.
With more on that, we now turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, how is all this uncertainty expected to affect the future of Afghanistan?
Well, with no clear leader, the dispute is threatening the nation's first ever attempt at a democratic transfer. Abdullah denounced Tuesday the preliminary results of the run-up election that show his opponent Ashraf Ghani up 12 percentage points. Abdullah and his supporters claim the vote was rigged and accuse outgoing President Hamid Karzai of helping to swing the vote in favor of Ghani. Meanwhile, the United States has warned it will draw financial and security support for Afghanistan if anyone tries to take power illegally. U.S. President Barack Obama has asked both candidates to allow enough time for an investigation into the fraud claims, while Secretary of State John Kerry plans to visit Kabul this Friday to discuss the disputed results. The Israeli military says it's ramping up its offensive against Hamas as rocket attacks head deeper into Israel. Palestinian officials said on Wednesday that at least 23 people were killed across the Gaza Strip during overnight Israeli airstrikes, destroying homes and injuring scores of civilians. Tel Aviv says nearly 120 rockets had hit Israeli territory on Tuesday near major cities. The violence follows the abduction and murder of 3 Israeli teens last month and the killing of a Palestinian teen last week. Israel says it's now considering a ground invasion of troops and tanks if the rocket fire continues. However, the conflict shows no sign of ending soon. And turning back to elections, Jakarta Governor Joko Widodo has claimed victory in Indonesia's presidential election. With more than 90% of the ballots counted, Indonesian think tank CSIS said Widodo had gained about 52% of the vote. But just an hour after the announcement, his main rival and former Army General Prabowo Subianto also claimed victory, citing results from other quick count centers. The two candidates have been neck and neck in opinion polls heading up to Election Day, and there are concerns of violence once the final results come out. Outgoing President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono has urged both sides to accept the result peacefully. The election has been a massive undertaking with 185 million voters casting ballots across 6,000 islands. And they're up to a look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm Stephen Che. Starting at the World Cup, Germany completely dismantled Brazil in their semifinal matchup 7-1, dashing the host nation's dream of winning it all on home soil. Our SJ Lee has the recap.
With millions of Brazilian fans hoping to see their national team advance to their first World Cup final since the 2002 Korea-Japan World Cup, expectations were high. But with high expectations came an even bigger disappointment as Brazil were thrashed 7-1 by Germany. With star striker Neymar out with an injury, the bigger blow to the Brazilian team was the absence of their captain and defender Thiago Silva, who was suspended due to yellow card accumulation. And with the cornerstone of the Brazilian defense unavailable, Germany scored 5 times in the first 30 minutes. One of the goals during the 30-minute frenzy came from the boot of 36-year-old Miroslav Klose, who broke the all-time World Cup goal record once held by none other than Brazil's Ronaldo by scoring his 16th World Cup goal in the 23rd minute of the match. For Germany, it was a sweet revenge for their 2-0 loss against Brazil in 2002 World Cup final. Germany will now play either Argentina or the Netherlands in the final on Sunday local time, while they have a shot at lifting their first World Cup since 1990 when they won as West Germany. SJ Lee, Arirang News.
And moving on, the semifinals continue on with the Netherlands taking on Argentina on the pitch. And they play a similar brand of football, punishing defenses with piercing drives to the net and sloppy offenses with speedy counterattacks. But the strategies have taken their toll. Argentina winger Angel Di Maria is out with a thigh injury, while Dutch striker Robin van Persie may miss the match with a stomach ailment. However, the Albiceleste have Lionel Messi and the Orange have Arjen Robben to dictate the action. Well, the battle for the World Cup final takes place on Wednesday at 5 p.m. in São Paulo or Thursday at 5 a.m. here in Korea. Meanwhile, the KBO All-Star Game is just about ready to go, with the rosters now filled. 2 days after the starters were announced, the league said on Wednesday that managers Ryu Jung-il for the Eastern League and Yang Sang-moon for the West have decided on their reserves. A notable pick is Lotte's Kang Min-ho, who's now made the team for 8 years in a row. Now all that's left is the game, which takes place in Gwangju next Friday. And leaving all of that there, let's get to Wednesday's top KBO matchup between the Lotte Giants and Samsung Lions. Now we go to the first inning. It's Hwang Jae-gyun who hits home the first run for Lotte. But same inning, Samsung's Yamaiko Navarro answers with a solo blast to tie it all up. Then we go to the next frame. More Samsung. Park Han-hee adds a run. It's 2-1 Samsung. And fast forward to the 6th inning, it's Kim Sang-soo who singles, and also Navarro singles, and 2 runs score in that inning. Lotte adds some late and almost catches up, but Samsung holds on to win this one 5-4. And looking at the other games, we have SK taking care of Kia 9-3. Nexon beats Hanwha 13-1. And finally, LG wins in extra innings over Tusan 3-2. Well, that's all I have for now. This has been Stephen Che. I'll see you back here later with more from the world of sports.
Typhoon Neoguri is passing through Korea's Jeju Island, but relief may be in sight.
We have our Kim Bo-kyung joining us from the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, it looks like the residents of Jeju will need to hunker down over the coming hours.
That's right. The typhoon will reach its peak from tonight through early tomorrow morning. At the moment, the storm is passing through 180 kilometers south of Seogwipo, Jeju, but it should turn towards Kyushu, Japan by tomorrow morning. As a result of the typhoon, another 20 to 60 millimeters will drop in Jeju, and most regions will get to see about 5 to 40 millimeters. Well, the storm also brought with it hot and humid winds, leading to the first heat wave warning of the season for Seoul as well as Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces. On to Thursday's readings, Seoul soars to a hot 33, while cities down south hit the low 30s. As for other regions, Daejeon jumps to 33, Jeju and Dokdo to the mid-20s. Ending off with World Cup weather, the Netherlands and Argentina will play their semi-final in Sao Paulo under moderate conditions. Hope you have a good day in which part of the world you're in.
All right, thank you very much for that, Bo-kyung, and that will do it for this edition of Primetime News.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.